We're going to be talking about a potential war between the United States and Venezuela, because it seems that Donald Trump has reached a point of no return. And I am saying that assuredly, I'm saying that confidently, that there is only two outcomes. If you are, you just jumped in the waiting room and you waited through those documentaries in order just to hear what I think as quick as possible, it's this. Donald Trump, by starting the blockade, has clicked a timer where there's only two outcomes possible. One outcome is the strangulation of the Venezuelan state. They will not be able to receive tax income. The government, which has nationalized large swaths of the nation, will not be able to pay the gigantic public sector and the public sector employees whose loyalty the state depends upon. Those who smuggle and use Venezuela as a hub for smuggling will not be able to make money, not only because their boats are exploding, but also because of course, the blockade. Profit from Venezuelan oil being sold to China will dry up, and that could mean the death of the Maduro regime, not because of a big military confrontation, but because they simply run out of funds and somebody takes advantage of the situation, i.e., overthrows Maduro, or Maduro makes an escape in the night, seeing the writing on the wall. The other option is an American back down, that we attempt to strangle the Venezuelan economy through the blockade. We attempt to put on the sanctions pressure. We attempt to make claims about Venezuela having resources that belong to us, that they nationalized in 2007, and that they have to pay us back. But then Venezuela doesn't budge. Let's say that Venezuela doesn't budge for a month or two, and given enough time, while China and Russia, seeing America's new national security strategy, seeing the rhetoric that's coming from the Trump administration, understands that the Trump administration views South America as their backyard and somewhere that nobody else can really meddle in. That's the Trumpian view. They don't want to risk that right now, but who knows how the situation will change in a few months. And it's not like the Russians and the Chinese, but especially the Russians, don't realize that if the Venezuelans go under, that's going to mean one of the nations with the largest, no, not one of the largest, the largest oil reserves in the world, being able to open up their markets to the West as a Western ally, when Russia has been trying to use their reserves, their fuel, as a, I don't want to say negotiation tool, as leverage against the West for a very long time. A European reliance on Russian energy. And if there were other alternatives, of course, the Europeans could benefit. Point is, I think at this point, the showdown is here, and it's either Trump is going to embarrass himself by starting a blockade and it goes nowhere, starves a bunch of Venezuelans, and the regime was not weak enough to collapse immediately, and the length of time that it would take could be extensive. Or the regime, within a few months, starts to crumble, starts to fray, and Maduro is no more. There's only one of two outcomes: either the complete humiliation of the government as it turns around and reverses policy, or the economic collapse of the Maduro regime. I don't think that this is a situation that is indefinite. I don't think Trump can just for 3 years blockade Venezuela and Venezuela just carries on as if business as usual. I think Venezuela is taking moves with that under consideration. So it's not like, even if Maduro's regime is stronger than the Trump government believes, that they can necessarily just wait it out until Donald Trump's no longer in office. But that doesn't mean that Trump wouldn't be willing to back down, depending upon how this goes. But that would mean Maduro taking certain risks, either trying to clear the blockade, possibly fire upon American ships, all of which, every single escalation ladder that I can think that Maduro could take, the United States reserves overwhelming superiority in the escalation ladder. Whether it comes to a fight at sea, a fight in the air, whether it comes to an American air campaign to disable Venezuelan air defense systems, whether it becomes an American air campaign to disable air defense systems and government buildings, as in stuff that supports government function. Whether it would be, some sort of ground campaign, which I highly doubt. I mean, the main problem with Trump's strategy at this point really is a war fatigue, a type of, I don't want to call it Vietnam syndrome. I guess you can call it Iraq syndrome that Trump has really catered to politically, that makes it so he is really looking for something to cause the regime to go down. And he wants to be able to create the environment for it, but somebody else still has to go in there and do it. Whether it is one of Maduro's generals, whether it is a popular uprising of the people once it's become too much, whether it is just an economic crisis that spirals out of hand, um, whether it is a combination of these factors stacking upon each other in a very quick succession. The Trump administration wants to create this outcome, and so I think now we're in the final end games. Escalation, yeah, like if Maduro decided to fire upon American ships, that would be an escalation. If he said, "I do not respect the blockade. This is not legal under international law. This is being done unilaterally by the United States. We're going to run the blockade because we need to export our fuel in order for Venezuelans to afford daily necessities. We need to export our fuel for the state to sustain itself." And they did that, they would not win the naval war. As much as I don't want to just repeat Trumpian talking points, we do have a very, very large naval force in the region right now, and we have much more at our disposal. Not on the ground when it comes to resources in Venezuela, even though we do have operatives in the country, and not everybody is friendly to Maduro. When it comes to a battle at sea to maintain the blockade, the United States maintains overwhelming superiority, overwhelming escalatory superiority. So if Maduro really, if he tried to run it and tried to sneak through and get through some gap, that'd be one thing. I think something like that could happen potentially without an escalation. Even though I could see Trump giving the order to fire upon anything trying to get through. But if we're talking a situation where the only way that the Venezuelans get out is firing upon American ships, that is an escalation that can only end bad for the Venezuelans. So that's what I mean when I say the United States maintains escalation superiority, escalation dominance. If they escalate at sea, the United States is way ahead. If they escalate when it comes to like some air campaign, it's not like Venezuela can do anything really to the United States right now. It's really a question of how long Venezuela's air defense systems could probably withstand an American air offensive. So it's not a question of whether or not the United States could topple Maduro. It's a question of whether or not the United States is willing to invest what's necessary to topple Maduro, and are we willing to invest enough to the point that he will topple? I.e., if we don't put troops on the ground, that might not be enough, but maybe it is. Maybe a blockade creates the economic circumstances that it is. But that's the roll of the dice Trump is willing to take with the scenario, and that's why it's a big dice roll. Either he runs away embarrassed and Venezuela is in an even worse humanitarian catastrophe, and we haven't gotten anywhere, or Maduro's gone. But I don't really see Trump backing down from this. I mean, I don't know. I guess the one thing I could see making Trump back down is a scenario where Maduro offers him an off ramp where Trump doesn't look embarrassed, i.e., hey, maybe we'll settle those seized assets you were talking about. We'll find some settlement. We'll start some payment plan. I don't know how Venezuela is going to get the money to start paying us back the $8.7 billion that we're or whatever amount of assets it was. I think it was like $8.7 billion worth of assets from like American energy conglomerates, in order to make the United States look like it's getting represented. I could see Trump taking a deal like that, maybe, especially if after today's announcement, the American public's reaction is like, what the fuck are we doing in Venezuela? What does this have to do with us? I was told that this had to do with drugs, but Susie Wiles, the White House chief of staff, just said in a very long and in-depth series of interviews, I think it was like 11 interviews with Vanity Fair, just said that the reason we're engaged in this campaign isn't to just like go out there and bust up like the drug cartels or whatever. It is to bring about the collapse of the Maduro government. So if there is a negative reaction to that, I could see it going differently. I could see it being a different scenario. Okay. I want to make sure we get through everything we need to get through before the announcement. The announcement is in 14 minutes. If you guys want me to guess what the announcement is going to be, I'm not one much for guessing. But my guess is Donald Trump is going to announce and explain the purpose of his blockade. The purpose of his blockade that he is going to describe is going to be we're fighting the drugs. They're bringing in the fent. Oh, the fetty. All the fetty's coming over from here. All the fentanyl precursors are coming from Venezuela. But fentanyl is not a problem really from Venezuela. Fentanyl precursors are coming from other locations. There is drug production in Venezuela, but it's mostly cocaine. And the vast majority of cocaine production is coming from Colombia, and the cocaine that is coming from Venezuela is going to the Caribbean that we're blowing up. Is a lot of it's going to Europe anyway. So that's going to be talked about. I think the drug angle is going to be talked about in justification. But every time you hear about the fentanyl overdoses and the fentanyl this and fentanyl that, we're not presented evidence that these ships are A, headed to the United States, or B, even necessarily carrying A, fentanyl, or B, even fentanyl precursors. And I would not be surprised, considering the shipping routes and what's typical for the area and where they're headed towards the Caribbean, for it to all be cocaine. And so when we're talking about the modern American drug crisis, I'm not saying cocaine isn't part of that. It's just not the first thing that people think about, especially cocaine headed towards often European markets. So this is something that they might try to attach to themselves marketing wise, but when it comes to the actual function of the outcome of this action, I don't see how this is lessening the drug inflow to the United States significantly, outside of some immeasurable symbolic impact it could have by intimidating drug smugglers, which has not been demonstrably showed to me, considering how do what I put it, determined drug smugglers are to make a profit in the largest consumer market in the world. And that allure is always going to bring somebody who wants to make some money. So there's going to be that. And I think the second big angle is going to be these seized assets. You're going to hear probably a lot from Trump about these seized assets. So the first thing that we should say is that when Trump says that these were seized assets from the United States, let me be clear. This is assets from an American company. This is not American government assets, as Trump has let out on social media. These are assets from, say, American energy conglomerates, which at the time in 2007, when Hugo Chavez decided that he was going to go with a nationalization campaign for the energy sector, we're talking about like $8.7 billion worth of assets. Now, maybe if you adjust for inflation, you can get a little bit more money there. But at the end of the day, that's not American government money. Those are American private companies. So I imagine he's going to talk about that theft of American wealth. If it's an American company, it's American wealth. Some talk of in that angle. Even though, of course, the Venezuelans will say it's within their national rights to engage in economic policy that they want, and if you're a company in this country, you have to abide by our laws and such. I would say that Venezuelan economic policy has not really shown much success within the last few decades. But I mean, they will, of course, make and not make the case. They will point to and assure the international community that they retain the right to sovereignty, the right to international borders, the right to their economic sovereignty. And so the Trump administration is going to make this case, though, to the American people that not only is Venezuela a drug problem, but Venezuela is also a problem when it comes to theft of American goods, of American money, of American capital. He'll probably just say like theft of American energy or theft of American resources, but these are not American resources. These would be American investments to develop resources so that we could make money. That would be a more honest depiction of what we're discussing. Much more honest depiction. So I expect those two things. I expect those two big things. I also expect them to talk about the rigging of the election. I would not be surprised if he made a quip about his own election. I would hope he would be bigger than that, but I mean, he isn't. So I'm not going to hope. But I would imagine he might talk about election rigging. Not that he particularly cares about that. I really don't think he does, but he might talk about that. And I think he might talk a bit about the opposition, maybe give a little bit of attention to the opposition, considering, the Nobel Prizes that are getting thrown around, not towards him, but towards Venezuelan opposition. And the fact that right now, Nicolas Maduro is not particularly popular. The economic situation is very bad. And we have every reason to believe that he did rig the last election. So this is something he can mention. I just don't think this is something that he cares about. I think this is something that he can kind of throw out there, just kind of like a, hey, reminder, Maduro's a bad guy. I don't know if he'll go into a listing of his human rights abuses and stuff, like torture or, corruption or stuff like that. Stuff that like Trump on the campaign trail would have said look cool, but either way, I do think that Trump is going to hit at least on a few of these things, especially the drugs, especially the theft of property, and probably the rigged election. So those are the big three I would probably say to listen out for. But the big important stuff outside of just predictions is actionables. I don't know if he's going to say anything outside of the blockade. If he was to announce a series of strikes, that would probably be the most extreme outcome for tonight. If Donald Trump was to come out and say, we're going to bomb this, we're going to bomb that, and we're going to bomb this, and we're going to bomb that, that would be quite surprising. Trump's usually the type of guy to just kind of pull the trigger. It could be that, as the talk's happening, like an operation commences, something like that. That would be the most extreme scenario. I find that less likely. But there has been discussion and rumor about an American air campaign in Venezuela targeting the energy sector or targeting the government for a very long time. But I would say that it's probably on the more extreme end of the spectrum. Much more likely is merely a verbal announcement to the country of what we already know is to now be policy, which is a blockade of Venezuela. And after the Democrats recently failed war power resolutions around Venezuela, they tried to bring out the War Powers Act on Venezuela, failed. I don't really see anything stopping Trump. I don't. Since Congress is not willing to act, and while it was a close vote, it was not close enough. It seems that Trump is, through using the same type of stretching of power that presidents have used before with the authorization for the use of military force, now stretched to its absolute ultimate limit. He is going to be able to try to engage in regime change in Venezuela. And it's all very, like, this isn't, nothing I'm saying here is particularly revolutionary here. It's particularly when you have Susie Wiles so out and about what it's really about what this is really intended to do. When she says that to a Vanity Fair interview, mind you, Susie Wiles does not do many Vanity Fair interviews. Many Vanity Fair interviews. She doesn't do any Vanity Fair interviews except for the one she did, but she doesn't do many interviews, period. So, and it was on the record. So, I mean, what was weird about a lot of those things that she said on the record is a lot of it really could come back to bite the Trump administration in the ass, not only from a public PR perspective, but she also like openly admitted that, that basically her and the president came to an agreement that he would have 90 days to engage in retribution and then he would be done. But then admitted also that he has done multiple acts of retribution past that, including the charges against Letitia James. Very interesting. I really don't know why she chose now to do this. I think she thought maybe she would be able to spin it and that Vanity Fair would, paint her in a favorable light. But I mean, the things that she said about the people around her are much more interesting than painting her in her favorable light, or like, oh, look at this workhorse Susie, you know? Maybe she thought like her calling, like saying Trump had the personality of an alcoholic. I know what she mean by he has an obsessive personality, but I mean, like, you don't give somebody like golden ammunition like that and don't expect like that to be a headline: alcoholic's personality, the president of the United States. I will admit that that headline does not give the finer detail of exactly what's trying to be implied, but you know, I don't know what you're not helping yourself here, I guess is my point. You're not helping yourself here. Did you guys see, by the way, if you guys have any confusion about like where the situation is currently in Venezuela, can we go check out Maduro? Can we go check out what Maduro's doing? The way Maduro has tried to generally portray the situation while also trying to get the military ready for a confrontation that it is surely not ready for, has been to basically just like, I don't know, like, don't worry, be happy, just like very trying to seem very unbothered and relaxed. These are the type of rallies he's hosting where it's like no war, save peace, and they're all like dancing to end the war. Very fun. Very fun. Do you think in the final days of Trump's time and politics, it'll be something like this? You think he'll be, you know, his final days in the office as like the Proud Boys failed to take the Capitol and like Operation like Storm the Winter Palace point 2.0 Electric Boogaloo fails? Think he'll be doing this dance from like in Mar-a-Lago from a live stream as the events play out? Who knows? But here is what I was talking about earlier, with Trump saying that they had a right to the land and the assets and such.
Yeah, what was that?
Getting land, oil rights, whatever we had, they took it away because we had a president that maybe wasn't watching. But they're not going to do that. We want it back. They took our oil rights. We had a lot of oil there. As you know, they threw our companies out, and we want it back.
He doesn't really seem to know what we had, just that we had something. It seems almost as if he was like, drudge up old conflicts, but this is an old conflict we've had for decades with them now. But let's see what we can throw out the wall here. And he doesn't even seem to totally understand exactly what American companies may be owed depending upon international court deliberations. Like what international courts have decided. Same international courts, of course, Trump has always paid much respect to. Anyway, I will say that while I don't think that the Venezuelans are going to take the decision to escalate with force and fire upon U.S. ships, the decision was made by the Venezuelan Navy to send escorts with the Navy that is currently out at sea. That means those, let me see if I can get the ship up here. It'll be a better explanation. Yep, here we are. The Venezuelan Navy has sent ships out with their merchant vessels so they can continue to try to export fuel, export oil, so they can continue to get imports of foreign currency that is necessary for the state to function, necessary for the economy already on the brink to function. And whether they intend to clear the American blockade, engage with U.S. ships, or just try to call Trump's bluff as Maduro tries to pull on every lever and push every button possible, find every avenue to survive, we will not know until they reach the line where this blockade is supposed to be being conducted. As we've already seen, one ship seized trying to leave Venezuelan ports and trade product.